Was the stat of actual deal close right after intro?
4 times. So it's just because of the trust of the person that made the intro. And if you ask for the intro, that means that's a real ICP.
What is your biggest stake for the go-to-market landscape at the moment?
Before COVID, everybody was in office. I had a client that had on their wall their top 100 companies in each one card like that on the whole wall. And then when they had a conversation, they would change the card to an orange card. And then when they closed them, it was a green card.
How you managed to build your own signal-based engine for the Swarm?
The way to ask an intro is fundamentally, I just didn't know before the Swarm, and I just never really asked for intros.
How would you use networking in order to make it part of your repeatable growth engine?
You obviously get the opt-in for the person, and then you don't put everything in the initial email.
Welcome everyone to My First Signal, the only show where we invite seasoned revenue drivers to discover the practical side of designing a signal-based go-to-market engine within 30 minutes. My name is Georgi, co-founder and CEO of Signal-Based. Now let's get practical. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, today on the hot chair, we have Olivia. Olivia, thank you very much for having the time to chat today.
Yeah, nice to see you, and thanks for having me, Georgie. Exciting.
Why don't we just start head first with the favorite, which is what is your biggest stake for the go-to-market landscape at the moment?
Yeah, like obviously there are some changes at play that are accelerating with AI. I think over the last few years, we've seen just like cold outbound, like declining cold email getting hit on LinkedIn a lot, and other platforms saying it's like dying or dead or whatnot. I don't know. I think what we're seeing is like there are some people that are very good at personalizing, finding the right signals, stacking the signals in the right way, and cutting through the noise. But what we see is also it's becoming harder because there's just an incredible amount of noise, and it's easier than ever to create noise, and it's harder than ever to break through because of the whole noise, AI generated content, and so on. And so
Yeah.
what you see at the Swarm is that relationships, like human people relationships, are an awesome moat and awesome asset that's underutilized that you should lean on to. So that's more for my little corner of the GTM world.
How do you see this standing out process and how do you guys do it with the Swarm?
Yeah, how to stand out in this crowded market as a company or as a growth like practitioner.
Both, however you feel, Sharik.
Yeah. There are obviously like tactics and strategy, right? Like at the tactical level, we can talk about all the best signals and how to stack them the best. I think really going back and like working, and it's like easier now to jump on tools and do stuff. And those are tactics. And just especially for a growth person, especially for a junior growth person to build that strategic mentality, meaning like what is strategy? It's like how do we put in place a plan to achieve a goal? And so going into what are the specifics of the company that I'm working with? What are the specifics of the target audience, and really study the target audience and the ICPs and like the personas. And that's where you actually then are going to find the best signals because they're very person specific. But starting with like really kind of like strategic layer that is like often forgotten because the world we live in is the world of playbooks and formulaic solutions. And I did this in the weekend and you can do it too. That's not how growth works. Growth is compounding. You need to build systems that compound, start with strategy, put like systems that compound in place. And then you go in the tactics and go into the tooling and the experimentation in this order, right? It's growth 101, but I just see a lot of time like a rush to try a new playbook that maybe is a waste of time or whatnot.
Yeah, totally. And what seems to resonate here is throughout all of the people that jump on the podcast, each one of them has at least one example where they hear another founder or a go-to-market executive directly jumping into the tools before their foundation. But then your signal-based engine very much will fail at any point of time because you don't really know what is that specific pain point that turns the initial buyer to search for you. Which leads me to putting you now on the hot chair.
All right.
sharing how you managed to build your own signal-based engine for the Swarm. Previously, you guys started by one way, right? Being not so data-driven product, and now you are a completely data-driven product with higher
Yeah.
ACV. So do you mind sharing both of the use cases and how initially that whole process looked like?
Yeah. So we are very like inbound heavy actually at the Swarm, and we do outbound mostly in the context of asking for warm introductions, which is what the tool does. But I'll break down like the inbound early on, leaning on like the CEO brand heavily and creating content on LinkedIn and just like doing like that like twice a week. We have an agency that does that with us. So we meet with them once a month, have talking points, we go through, then they take off, they take those 30 minutes, it's a very productive 30 minutes, and they slice it into like content text, carousels, videos and stuff. That's awesome because it's extremely productive and you can have a CEO, CTO, myself, CGO do that every month and then you just like you post. And that compounds really well because of our ICP, which is startups, founders, sales, which is very heavy on LinkedIn, obviously. So it works very well for us, but that's just us. And then invested like in like events, like webinars, co-hosted webinars and things like that are a little bit like old school, but I just think there's a huge amount of brand awareness and credibility that comes when you do that. And even if people don't show up at the webinar, it's fine because if you see, oh, like the Swarm is doing a webinar with Clay, okay, that puts the Swarm in a higher category.
The familiarity
And
effect, yeah.
like, you might not sign up for the webinar. That's fine. 30, 40 people are going to sign up for the webinar. That doesn't, it matters, obviously. That's your most engaged audience. You're going to,
Yeah.
like, those
That's an
people.
interesting take,
Yeah.
actually.
There's, and in my opinion, just like a ton of like low hanging fruits. If you look at the KPIs too close, you lose sight of that. You're like, oh, only 30 people showed up. We're not going to do it next quarter. Wait a minute. You actually, there are small like adjacent effects. Like we told our investors they were having an event with Clay. Okay, great. That gives us like credibility with our investors. We told like our audience, we told our prospects that were already in trial. They're trialing the Swarm. They see this, they may not join, whatever. But so there's just like the awareness aspect. That's what creates inbound awareness. So I do a lot of like awareness plays and then let the product do the talking. And then the outbound piece, then you break down let the product do the talking. We just kind of remove the shackles of the trials, make it as easy as possible to try it. So no credit card up front, 2-week trial, like longer trial, 2 weeks, not 7 days or 5 days or 3 days, like I see sometimes. And just like remove that. And the outbound, we do like warm intros. So we map our own network and then reach out actually asking for warm intros or trying some like name dropping emails and so on, which converts better than just cold outbound.
For sure. The question I feel like there is how do you do it at scale? And this is something that nobody has covered yet. Like how do you do intros at scale? And is there actually a whole playbook? Let's exclude Swarm as a tool itself. Let's say that Swarm never existed, but you really want to run this. Like how would you do that? How would you use intros? And obviously it's quite nice whenever you can do like your previous buyer went to another company and they say they are becoming like a buyer in the new company. But yeah, how would you use networking to that degree in order to make it part of your repeatable growth engine?
Yeah, like you said, the Swarm is just a tool and the motion is bigger than just a tool. I think things like alumni tracking, like your users, like moving companies, okay, like your happy users, like, or your most engaged users, wherever you call them, move companies. Now that's like a huge like signal to get them to introduce you in their new company. And that's something you can do with Clay or Cargo or whatnot and just have this signal base. That's a very powerful one, obviously. The way, if the Swarm didn't exist, it's like, it's a tough one for me. Like if the Swarm didn't exist, I would go, and that's what like a lot of companies do. And then they talk to Swarm, but what they do is they take they make a list of their top like 50 connectors, like people that are going to give you intro, and sit down and make that list, like those people that are like maybe happy customers, maybe they're partners, maybe they're already giving you referrals. So they're obviously should be on this list. Maybe they're investors if you have investors, maybe they're angel investors, operators, industry friends, or people that you are building partnerships with, or whatnot. And so that's a list that can be like 50, that can be 500 people, to be honest. That can be a long
Well,
list.
okay.
Adio, I use Adio as a CRM. It's pretty cool because it has the connection strength. So it's built in that, like, based on the recency and frequency of emails, like people you email the most and stuff. So you have a built-in list of that, and you can export it and you can refine it. So once you have those people, an easy thing is to build a target account list of like 100 companies, your top dream target 100 company, and go to them with, hey, we built this top 100. I had a client that had, like, on their wall, there was, before COVID, everybody was in office, but they had like their top 100 companies in each one card like that on the whole wall. And then when they had a conversation, they would change the card to an orange card. And then when they closed them, it was a green card. So
Okay.
there was a mosaic of, it was cool because it was like that. But in an email format, you would say, hey, investor, or hey, Georgie, like, this is our top 100. I just want you to have that list because you may know people that at that company, and they're that big company. So maybe you have an entry to that person. This is the people are trying to get in touch with. Even if you don't know the exact right person, that's fine. But if you know someone that lets me in, then I can work my way in to the right person. People want to help. You open 100 companies, easy to digest. You open it. It's like maybe in a nice, I don't know, like a web form, and you can review and you can say, yeah, I know someone at Google, and I know someone at Stripe, and I know someone at Figma, and yeah, send me a good email. I'll make the intro. So there you go. You have sent 100 emails to people who know you. You get 99 responses, hopefully, because they're like, or whatever your list of connectors is. And there you go. You have intros. And now, if you want to really do that at scale, then you add more connectors. And then you, instead of sending them a list of companies, you actually, like, look at their network in detail
And scale it with Swarm, yeah. No, that's awesome. Oh, until two, obviously there is a lot of learning that goes into it. And I want to cover the dark side of that journey of discovering this scalable growth channel. Where do you initially screw up when you try to scale that own playbook of yours?
The way to ask an intro is like fundamentally like something I just didn't know before the Swarm, and I just never really asked for intros. I had an agency before, and it was very inbound, and I just didn't really ask for intros. You obviously get the opt-in for the person, and then you don't put everything in the initial email. You just put, like, the person and the reason why you want to reach out to them, and you don't put, like, everything about my company that you should send them, because that's too early. Like, you're just, like, asking permission. You're asking the person if they know the other person well enough. And so that email should be, like, super short. It should be super easy to reply yes or no to. Once you get that permission, then it's when you get, okay, now I'll send you a forwardable email. And the forwardable email, I also didn't really know about that, like, ways to ask for intros, but that's, like, the best way to do it, because it's one click. Hit, like, for the person who makes the intro, they receive it, one click, forward. And then they get the opt-in for the person. I see a lot of times, like, people try to give intros and put the two people in the email, and I've done this before too, and say, hey, you guys should talk. And it's not how it doesn't, yeah, it puts a lot of pressure on people to meet them, and it's not the best way to do it. So asking for opt-in, make it super short, super clear, and just give, like, the context for the intros. It's not just, I want to meet someone at Google. Yeah, okay, but
For what reason? Yeah.
specifically, and who ideally, and then what's going to be the impact if that happens. Obviously, the whatnot, but yeah.
I'm curious, how would you loop this on top of an already running signal-based system? We're talking about not only the prospecting layer, right? Because pretty much they have this relationship management solution that does the prospecting for you. Let's say that this person ignores you, or let's say that you take one call and they say, oh yeah, we'll revise it later. But then how do you keep on looping them back and use that initial warmth of the account to build a proper system around it? Like, how do you do it, and how do you see your clients doing it?
Post intro.
Yes, post intro, because it never I assume at least you correct me there. Was the stat of actual deal close right after intro?
What's the what? Sorry.
Was the stat around deal
Yeah,
close right after the intro?
yeah. We see like that. It's four. I think totally like with like 100, few hundred customers. Like it's four times like meeting to close than cold. Like than a cold or even like an inbound like four times. So it's just because of the trust of the person that made the intro. And if you ask for the intro, that means that's a real ICP, and now
Yep.
you get so there's the compounding effect of that. Real ICP, the person like accepted to talk to you from someone they trust, and then it just compounds to close better. Then like post intro, there's a lot of stuff you can do in an enterprise sales motion. You would multi-thread or mid market or enterprise sales motion. You would potentially multi-thread. Now you can like build like surround sound around like the buying committee. Now you get it in at the company. Maybe you deploy like ads, LinkedIn sponsored posts so that the CEO of the company and whatnot, or whatever is your buying committee sees your stuff. And that's like ABM, right? And that's creating that surround sound or asking for an intro to someone else. It depends on like your deal size and so on. I think this is more like for mid-market to enterprise, but like even
Yep.
for SMB deals, like just having that like post intros, everybody gets added to the retargeting audience.
Boom. There you go.
The 90-day window, they're gonna get our ads or whatnot is one easy one.
Yeah. Okay. No, that's awesome because we need to wrap it up. You have another call in 5 minutes or something. Just to address what is the most underrated advice that you can give to the go-to-market practitioners out there?
Most underrated advice.
Something that it's not cloud code, please, because I feel like everyone knows about cloud code at the moment. So,
That's yeah. I'll say one. Okay, from my own experience, like I took Reforge 2 years ago, and it rewired my brain in terms of the not just the core concept, but going deep. It's awesome at going deep because it gives you the core concept, growth loops, the different types of loops, retention, churn, those things you need to understand very well. And then for each concept, it goes so deep. If you want, you can go so deep in each concept. And that's one of the best like training I've ever taken. And I would recommend Reforge if you want to. And it was like $2,000 a year, I think.
yeah.
And yeah, if your company can pay for it or whatnot, it's really solid. And you have a whole year. Because if you take one workshop for 3 days, then it's too much information. Like you really take the whole year to learn, do like weekly stuff. I don't know if it's underrated because they're pretty known, but
So
that's
you
my,
would say invest in education of your team members, pretty much, which is
oh
not
yeah.
something that
Oh yeah.
anyone talks about.
I try to do my rule of thumb and sometimes I mess it up, but I try to do once a year something. So it's pretty easy to like, hey, it's 2026. What am I going to do in 2026? Last year I did Reforge. Maybe this year, like the year before, I did like an MIT thing. It sounds fancy, but it was like an online thing with
Okay.
MIT. That was like $1,000. And I know I get like MIT on my LinkedIn, and it was very good content because they're not like shitty. And I did that. Then I did Reforge, and I try to do something every year. And I don't know what I'm going to do this year, but if you have any ideas, yeah, let me know.
A few actually. So shout out to the RevTech Accelerator from Francesco. They're using Signal Base, so very awesome stuff in there. The Clay Bootcamp, Adam and Tanai are out, which are two of the main Clay mentors. They do a lot of teaching hand to hand in small groups, so that's awesome. And lastly, the GTM Engineering School by Matteo is also a great source. So if
Nice.
someone wants to actually upskill their SDRs into GTMEs, or even if you're a growth exec, like it's always nice to learn how to become more strategic with the available tooling that there is. I'll recommend those guys for sure.
Nice. Glad I asked.
Cool. Okay, I guys need to wrap it up. Thank you very much for watching this episode, and let us know if you happen to try this relationship based growth. Maybe we will even call this episode as it is. And yeah, extremely curious to see how that will go for you.
Thanks, Georgie. Really fun chatting today. All right, talk
Yes,
soon.
sir. Have a good one.
Thanks.